Hi everyone, welcome to Gamma's Rhino tutorial basics. Today is my third video and it would be on solids. In the previous two sessions, I have given a tutorial on the curves and the surface commands, and today we would be looking into the solids and the transformation command. So if you have gone through the first two videos, you might see that I refer to this exercise file. But in this third video, I have just reworked on my exercise file and I have maybe organized it a bit better for the moment, so that you can easily navigate through and see a step-by-step view of most of the things that I have done um, for some exercises. It might be a bit different from the previous exercise file because a lot of geometries have changed since the time while I had made that file. It was around it was around 1.5 year back, and now I have just used those elements, some of the good elements of that file, and I have just made a better version of that file with some new exercises, of course. So I'm just gonna go through surface commands today. Most importantly, we would learn all the commands in the surface, or let's say most of the important commands in the surface. An important thing that we would learn today would be booleans, and we would also look into the transformation. So yeah, let's start. So as we learned in curves and surfaces, and as I always say, um, you always have to follow the command line um, when you are trying to execute any command in Rhino. Um, so if I just show you the solid tab, you can see that I have all these kind of solids that I could create in my design space. So the first half of the tab would be more with the primitives, where you are um, more engaged in creating a solid, and the other half, or the second part of this tab, you would see some utilities that you could change your solid into some things. So those are some utility tools that you can see here, like offset or filling, or boolean. Even boolean is a utility that goes with the solid. So to start with the solid, and the very basic kind of solid that we see around is a box. And as we learned from in curves, when we talk about rectangles, you have these many ways of creating a solid. Similarly, you have these many ways of creating a solid in Rhino. The very basic solid being a box can be created either by corner height method, or a diagonal method, a 3-point height method, vertical base, and center of base corner height method. So what are these corner and diagonal 3-point height? So I'm just going to show you some of them very quickly. Also, there are some other commands that you might be requiring while going through um, on moving around in the design space. So as your right hand mouse button um, would orbit the screen, your scroll mouse would zoom in and zoom out, and your left hand click button would be selecting an object. Okay, so you can do a reverse selection, or you can do a forward selection, on the kind depending on the kind of selection that you would like to make. Apart from that, if you are lost in the screen on the screen and you don't know anything about where your geometry lies, uh, this command comes in handy. You just need to type zoom, and you can say um, you can just read the command line. It says drag a window to zoom. So either you can drag the area that you want to zoom in, or if you're lost, let's say for the moment I'm lost, you can just press E and enter. So you can see that it it just zooms to the extent or the kind of area which has been used for the moment um, on your design screen, and it just zooms that area for you. So a shortcut would be Z space E space. So that's your zoom, and E is your extend. Okay. If you want to do a zoom target, so you can just select the target and you can just say zoom, and T is your target. So yeah, so it's already on the screen. Okay, so having said that, let's start with some basic solids that we could create with this solid tab. So in solid, we have a box. The very easiest way of making a box is corner height. So what does that mean? Um, so it says first corner of the base. So you select the first corner of the base. I'm just gonna switch to a better perspective for the moment, or better angle of view. Okay, and now it asks for the second length. So either you can just specify the length for the moment. Let's say I want to specify 10 units, so I'm saying 10, and it says width. So if you would like to give the same units for both or for the following length parameter as well, so you can just press enter, so it would automatically take 10 as uh, 10 as the units that you would like to give for your length and for your breadth, and you can do the same for your height as well. So if you say 10, if you press enter, you would get a kind of box which is 10 in length, 10 in breadth, and 10 in height. So that's a corner point uh, box, corner height box, let's say. Similarly, if you would like to create another solid with a diagonal method, you can just press diagonal. It asks for select the first corner of the cube, and yeah, once you press, you can specify the diagonal length. Um, So I can say 20, but then it could be 20 in any direction. So I'm saying 20, enter, and it just once you do 20, enter, so it eventually it eventually sets the length as 20, and you could see like these are all the ways you could create a corner. uh, you can select your second corner, and then you just provide a height. If you want to say I want to have 20 as my height, or diagonal height, you can say, um, then it's gonna just ask me in what direction would you like to have that 20. uh, so I'm just gonna select this one. Okay, so that's my diagonal box. Third is a point height. So solid box, 3 points and height. So I could just specify a few points, three, and that's the fourth. So that's how, I mean, it's fairly easy. I wouldn't take a lot of stress with these commands. You can explore some other commands or some other ways of making a box. I'm just gonna rush through this thing very quickly because I'm sure you can play around with this software. Um, with all the commands if you would like to do that. But let's do some basics first, and then maybe um, we can revisit these things again if it's required. The second one is a sphere. How do you make a sphere? There are a few methods in through which you could create these create a sphere. The very easiest one is you pick a center and you pick a radius. So I have a center as somewhere in my design space, and then my radius would be, let's say, 5. So this is what I would get with center and radius. I could have a sphere with 2 points, so I could press the first point. I can say the end of diameter is 10, and I would get some things in, so it locks itself at 10 units, and it would just ask me in what direction would you like to create your sphere. So that's my sphere with 10 diameter. So guys, I'm not mentioning any units for the moment. Like I haven't, I'm not sure and what unit I have made this file. I think it's meters, but I mean, it's better if I just say units instead of specifying any unit to this. So yeah. And the third one, I you could try the 3 point, 4 point. I would like to show around the curve. So as we saw um, in some of the previous commands that it very efficiently picks the tangent of the curve and it eventually forms a geometry on that particular curve. So you can see like um, if I execute this command of having a sphere on along a curve, so it would ask me select the curve. If I say this is my curve, then it would say specify the center point of the sphere on the curve. So I would say this is my center point, and then I can execute it by either specifying some um, unit length, which would be my radius because that's what it says. If you would like to do it, if you would like to give the units for diameter, then you can give the units for diameter. You can just select whatever you would like to uh, have, or whatever you would like the command to execute for you. If you want to have the circumference, then you can just give a circumference that I would like to have a circumference of just 5 units, or let's say 10 units, and then you would get some things with that circumference only. So it's quite easy. If you want to re-execute that command, you can either press enter or space, and the previous command gets activated in that case. And you can see that it again asks me for a center on the curve, and I can select if with what if I can just say that I want the area to be 10, and it would eventually give me a curve, a sphere, um, which has a circumference area of 10. Okay, so I hope that this is easy and quite doable. Uh, Moving ahead, um, these are some of the very uh, basic solids, or you would find these kind of solids in most of the 3D modeling softwares. Next is cylinder. It asks for a radius. Let's say my radius is 3, and I press enter, and end of the radius, which would be my height. Let's say it would be 4, or let's say 10. So it's, I think my plane has just been flipped. My z-axis is negative, but Yeah, so this is my cylinder with um, 3 unit radius and 10 units of height. Okay, so that's cylinder. Okay, next up is cone. Um, Solid cone. It asks for the base. Let's say this, that's my base. Say 10 units, enter, and it's gonna ask me what should be the height that, let's say I want to give a height of 20. So if I lock it, I would get a height of 20. Next is a pyramid, solid pyramid. Um, you can either you can start with any polygon. In this case, let's say if I have like 4 sides, so I can just select number sides equal to 4, enter, and then I can maybe specify the point. Let's say my point would be 10. So it's gonna ask me, you can press shift and it would switch to the ortho mode. If you look down, oh, my sticky key is on. So if you look down here, if I press shift, my ortho gets activated. So if you press shift, your ortho gets activated. If you uh, leave the key, then it gets back to normal. So I'm gonna press an ortho. I'm just gonna place it in a better way. So, and you just give a height, whatever, 20. So that's how my pyramid would be. But I can have different, I could have more sides to my pyramid. I could say that I want to have, say, 6 sides, and my unit could be 10 again. Enter, um, ortho, and then say 30, enter. So it gets very easy once you start reading um, the command lines, and if you start following these command lines, um, so I would request you all to whenever request you all to um, follow the command line every time um, you are confused with some commands, or if you tend to forget things, maybe command line could be a good way to make you remember these about these tools. Okay, so next is a pyramid, but this is not a normal pyramid, it's a truncated pyramid. So I'm just gonna change this text very quickly. So it's a truncated pyramid, and you could find this truncated pyramid here. Oh, it's a truncated cone. It's not pyramid. Sorry for that. Mm, or was it truncated pyramid? It was truncated pyramid. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. So what's a truncated pyramid? Um, Same way you can just select the center, have number of sides, 6, and you can form. So that's the first base. You can give it a height, let's say 20, and now you can have another um, mm, radius to the top of your. So in this case, let's say if I go with 5, so it means my base has radius of 10 units and the top has a radius of 5 units. So that's a truncated pyramid. Okay. So for the moment we are doing all the basic commands that we see in Rhino. Eventually we would shift our focus from just having introduction to all the commands to um, applying these commands in various exercises. I have done few exercises here which could interest you all. Um, so yeah, I mean, we can definitely have a look into what we could do with these commands, and what are some commands which are really very helpful to us. Because I mean, this software or these kind of softwares are not just made for one specific profession, because there are a lot of professions involved or use these softwares as a tool for executing their designs. I think somewhere down the line we need to understand how efficient or how efficiently we could use these tools. But yeah, it's always good to learn or know all the commands first and then start to work on your design and your models, 3D models. So yeah, next up is ellipsoid. So from center, from foci, from center, it's the same as making a circle sometimes I feel. So it asks for the first axis. If you press shift, you can have again my sticky. You can have you can have your selection in ortho mode. So I'm just gonna press 10 and select it in my ortho mode, and my another radius would be, let's say, 30, which would be perpendicular, and again it would be like 10. So this is my ellipsoid for the moment. Okay, now paraboloid. Yeah, so it asks for a focus and direction. So you select and you give a direction. Let's say this is my direction. So it's gonna make a paraboloid based on the direction and the focus. And this is, yeah. Now this could be a useful tool, a tube. Um, it asks for a base of the tube, um, give a radius 10, the inner radius, the outer radius could be say 15. Press enter and it's gonna ask for the height, or let's say the end of the tube. That's what the software says. So I'm just gonna give it 5 units and I would have some things like this. Okay. Another useful tool would be pipe. So if I have some curve like this and I would like to just make a pipe around this curve, I could go to solid, I could press select, I could press pipe and it would ask me select the rail. So if this is my rail, then it's gonna ask me for thickness of the pipe. So let's say I'm gonna give it 1 unit of thickness and it would ask for thickness at the other end as well. So let's say if I want to have 2 units here, so or 5 units here, and when I press enter, it would give me some things like this where it starts the pipe at 1 unit and it ends it at 5 unit. You could also have your pipe ending with the same diameter or ending with the same radius or diameter, whatever you choose. And you could have different kind of capping options. You could select rounded or flat. And for now, let's say I want to have rounded options. So I would select 1 unit here and also 1 unit here. And I would say point to the next radius. Yeah. So you can see that my capping now is rounded and not flat. Okay, cool. Moving on, we have a slab. So what's a slab? It's fairly easy. You have a curve and you would like to, let's make a curve. Let's take this curve. Okay, I have this curve and I would like to make a slab of this curve. You go to solids, slab, it will ask for an offset. So let's say I'm gonna offset it with 3 units, and in which direction. So if this is my direction, and what is the height? So let's say my height would be 10. So that's how my slab would look like for a curve. Okay, I could try this with a different curve. Say if I have something like this, and if I would like to do a slab, it would ask me in what direction would you like to give it a thickness or an offset. Let's say 1, and then once I select that, 10. So that's how my slab would be. So that's slab. So these are some very easy ways of creating a solid. Next up is Taurus. I think I like Taurus quite a lot as a geometry because I mean, there are a lot of underlying mysteries in this particular geometry. So, I mean, I use this quite a lot. Not as the shape that you see right now, but um, if you insert planes at different location, you could get some very nice um, surfaces which can be further developed into some things, and that's an interesting part about this geometry. So I would suggest that people who would like to who are very much interested in learning um, about mathematical surfaces, they should try to explore this geometry to its full efficiency. Okay, so coming back, it's a straightforward process. You need to mention the radius, let's say 10, second radius. So in this case, my second radius would be, oops, center of the torus, 10, and the other radius would be the radius of this um, of the circle, which acts as a kind of so I'm just gonna say 3, that's it. And this is how Taurus will look like. I think I'm just gonna replace this with this geometry because I might have just confused it. Okay. So that's Taurus. We have some commands like 3D text, which I think we could try exploring, but it's not like I'm just gonna select whatever is there and put it on the screen. Okay, let's go for text. 5 units. I need a you can select the output. So if I select curve, then I would get the output as curve. I could get surface as an output. I could get solid as an output. So let's take solid as an output, and I would like to group this output. So yeah, this is how my solid output would look like. Okay, so I think these are all the primitives through which you could easily create your solid. Now we could just move on to our um, next half of the command of this tab in particular. Okay. Okay, so the next thing that we would be learning about solid are the utilities that we would be using um, after we make a solid. So some utilities like extruding curves, extruding surfaces, extruding surface to a boundary. These are something new, rib and boss. I would just go through that as well. Offset surfaces, filling, blending, or even chamfering. So all these commands that we would go through in the utility part. So let's go to solid and just let's explore what are the utilities that we have here. Um, we have the extrude planar curve. So if I have a curve, let's take some curves here. So it's kind of straightforward that I have a curve and I could just extrude it with whatever units that I want in whatever direction that I want. If I want, I could choose a direction. Um, so I could get some things like this. Right now, I think it would take everything on a plane. Um, so I don't want that. So I'm just going to re-execute that with the curve. Select that curve. It would ask me what is the extrusion distance. Let's say 5, and I think that's my extrusion of a planar curve in a straight line. Next is along a surface. So if you have, say, this curve here, and this is your profile which you would like to extrude along this curve, then you can just select solid, extrude planar curve along the curve, and it would ask select path curve near start. You press enter because curve to extrude, so this is the curve to extrude. Press enter, select path curve near start, so it would say so you can see that it eventually follows this curve extrusion. You can try the other way as well, where I'm saying that I want to make this curve extrude along the other curve, and I could get something like this. Um, okay. um, I think this is a bit. I mean, okay. Anyways, I'll just go through this. To a point, so you have a curve to extrude, and you need to select a point, so you need to go to your viewports, and then you'll have to switch to, I mean, you need to select project before so when you do a project, so you could do it in few ways, I would say. mm, you can do a selection in two different viewports. I think that could be. So let's say I have this here. So what I could do is I could press Alt and just make a click in my top, and sorry, extrude. Yeah, sorry, it's not Alt, it's Control. If you keep on pressing Control and you do your first click in any of these viewports in which you would like your point to have, and then in the second viewport, so I'm just gonna do this command again. You select the curve which you would like to um, extrude to a point, press enter. It asks for point to extrude. Okay, so you know that in your top viewport it should be somewhere around this region, so you press control and you left click, and you go to another viewport, let's say in my right viewport, and I keep on pressing to my control button, and I press left hand again, left I click, so I would get some things like this. Okay, and then solid, tapered, you have a curve, select curve to extrude. Let's have this extruded, and so in this you can give a draft angle. So in, let's say I want to give a draft angle of 45 degrees, so I could have something at 45 degrees, and um, the height and the distance would be 20, let's say. So you would get some things at 45 degrees, but um, the length would be 20 units, because that's what I selected. You can follow this and the way we made some extruded planar curves. We can do a similar kind of surface creation with extrude surface. In this, you can see that all my base geometry is a curve, but here you would require a surface as your base geometry to start or to execute this command. So to start with, let's do surface and sorry, solid extrude surface. You can do straight. So this is your surface to extrude. You can press enter and you can see like I could extrude it with whatever length I want. Um, you can also extrude it along a curve. So if I have a surface and if I say sorry, if I have a solid extrude along curve, select the surface to extrude and press enter, select a path and press enter. So I could see that, so it is getting executed in the different direction. It might be because I might not be selecting it right. Let's see, select the surface, enter when done. So I have to press the path near the start. So that's one of the reason it was just getting executed in the other. So if I select this as my start, then it would just get flipped as we saw earlier. To a point, again the same, but in this case it would be a surface. Um, you can have a tapered extrusion. So you go to solid, you go to extrude surface, tapered, select the surface, enter, and it would ask for a draft angle. So let's say my draft angle is 5 and my extrusion distance is 10, and I would say if I would like to have just the extrusion but not as a solid, so I can just say no, and if I enter I would get some things like this, but it won't be a solid, but I would just get all these surfaces. But let's do it another time with a solid. Let's give it let the draft angle be 10, enter, and let's have the extrusion distance as 20. Oh, I didn't select the solid again. But so the thing is, if it would it would have an angle from all different directions. I mean, all the sides would have a draft angle, so that's why I think 5 was better earlier. So I can see that if I press now and if I say solid as yes, I'm just gonna press 10 and enter. So I would see that my extrusion is tapered and it's not like a straight extrusion that I could see, and that would be one of the example that I would like to keep for better visualization. Or maybe I could do another one and keep the draft angle as 10 and extruded with 10. So that's something that I could. So yeah, I mean, this is what we could do. Now, extrude surface to boundary. What does this command allow us to do? Well, if you have a surface, and in fact, if you have more than one surface, imagine that you have a surface like this, for instance, okay, to start with, and you would like to say, I'm just gonna create a quick rectangle, or Okay, so I have this as my, okay, so let's say that if I have this as my surface and this is somewhere here, let's say it's kind of my roofing element. Okay, and if I extrude this, I don't know exactly where my geometry would, end up on this surface. So in that case, there is this command called um, extrude surface to a boundary. So you can just select straight extrusion. This is the surface that I would like to extrude. Press enter when it's done and select the boundary on the surface. So you can press any of these surfaces. So you could see that now um, it eventually takes the shape of my surface. So that's how it has been extruded, and this eventually is kind of my roofing element um, with whatever geometry that I have extruded beneath. So there could be straight extrusions along a curve. I would recommend you to do the rest of it like the way we have done here. It has different kinds of geometries and you could get these kind of results. So I would really like you all to explore more of these extrude surface to boundary command. Next is rib, sorry, boss. So what's a boss command? You can see that this is something that I have kept in for reference. So if I just go to, I have some bunch of curves here. Let's take these curves somewhere. So let's just give it a different height, all of it. Okay, so once I give it a different height, what I would like to do is I would like to have these curves extruded or projected on this surface and or this solid and eventually have its own mass. So let's say if I go to solid, boss, it would ask me all the planar curves. So these are all my planar curves and it would ask me for a boundary. So this is my boundary on which I would like to project. So see what it does. So you can see that it eventually just projects all these curves on this surface and eventually forms a solid of that projection. So I would get this as one single object. Okay, so that's a boss command. Similarly, I would just like to keep this geometry and I would like to show you what's a rib command. So let's say I have solid, I press rib and it would ask me select a planar curve. That's my planar. Um, Select the boundary. Now it would do the same thing, but your curves would have an offset. So previous to this, if you might have seen in the command line that my rib um, unit was zero point 0.1, so if I could increase it to 0.2 or 0.3, let's say, enter it, and then I can select all these commands. If you want to deselect something, just press Control and deselect that element. If you want to select it, then press if you want to select some element, then press Shift and enter that. Okay. So these are my planar curves, and that's the boundary that I would like to rib. So you can see like I'm getting some things like this. Okay, so I think what else? We have offset surface. So let's say we have this as our surface and we would like to just offset this with some unit. I could go to solid um, offset and let's say select surface or poly surface to offset. Let's say this is my poly surface and it would ask me in what direction should I offset it. If I do a flip, it would offset in it would take the normals negative of to the surface, and I could just specify the distance as 0.3 and enter, and you can see like I have this kind of nice thin lining on this shell. So I think that's the offset command for solids. Now some more utility tools. I think we are familiar um, with these terms: filling, blending, and chamfering. Um, Something new would be capping the solids. Um, yeah, so starting with the fillet edge, we have solid. We go to fillet edge and we can just specify the radius. So I can just select the edge of the solid. Let's say if this is my solid edge, I could just select the edge and I can select, I can just fillet different curves, let's say for the moment. And you can change the radius as well. So let's say if I want to have, but that would be for the next radius that you select. So if you want to change the radius, you might have to do it first. So let's have like 2 as my first. Let's have this as 2. Next I would go for say 1. So this is again 1. Next would be 2. So let's say this is again 2, this is again 2, and then again I would like to have 1. So this is again 1, and yeah, once it's done you can just say enter, and it would ask me for like it would give me these kind of different handles which I could control. So if I would like to increase it here, let's say I could just very carefully uh, move these handles. I want to do it like around 4, and here itself I would like to do something around 4 2 1. So you need to be very careful, and you can add more handles if you want, but I don't want to have more handles. I'm fine with this one. You can switch your preview on if you like, so you would see that this is how it would look. You could have you can either trim and join, or you can just have this. In this case I have said that yes, trim and join. So yes, that's my preview, and then you press enter. So that's what I have here. I'm just gonna put this in my content. So I'm just gonna, so that's what I have as a transformed object or a final geometry by a lot of fillet. Similarly, you could do blend edges. So solid, um, blend, you can select this and then you say, okay, blend this one with this one, and you should get some things like this. Okay, let's try another one. So you can just play with these blending tools. I think this is chamfering, so I'm just gonna change. Yeah, that's my chamfer. It's a chamfer edge. Okay, so I can go to solid, fillet, chamfer edge, select the edge to chamfer, and the distance. Um, so you can see that that's my chamfering. Okay. Okay, so next up is gap planar. So if you have um, some geometry which is open-ended, and instead of like trying to create some surface by yourself, you could select cap planar command. So what cap planar command does is it's just fills the hole wherever you see these holes, it just fills it up for you. So that's a cap planar command. And then there is this extract surface. So let's say if you have a solid, if you want to extract any particular surface from that solid, so you can just select extract solid and you can select whatever surface that you would like to extract. Press enter, and you can see that this is one geometry and this is the extracted surface. Okay, now the most important part of this particular session would be Boolean. There are like this is kind of most useful thing that I have found so far, and you can use it in many ways. So I'm just gonna tell, I'm just gonna run through the Boolean commands, all the Boolean commands which are available. So in solid, if you see this part, you can see that we have union, we have difference, intersection, two objects, split. So all these are Boolean commands, okay? So let's say that I have this geometry, I have this geometry, we have all these geometries, separate geometries for the moment. So I have all these as separate geometries. If I see it in my ghosted view, I could see that this is not just one surface or one solid. I can see many more solid which are just passing through each other for the moment. And I would like to create a union of this particular solid. So what I could do is I could just go to solid and I could say union, and it says select surface to the polysurface to union. I could just select them all and I could say a union of it. Now when you see it, you can already see the difference that I am getting a split at these points, and this becomes one single solid then to have. Previously it was some things like this. So if you see that some of the lines were quite visible while they were going through another solid, but in this case when I do Boolean union, I can just make a union of that of all the selected geometries. Okay, now what's a Boolean split? So a difference, not a split. So it asks for a polysurface to subtract. So this is my surface that I would like to subtract. Um, and and yeah, once I say, sorry, surface to subtract and press enter and select surface or polysurface to subtract width. Okay, so this and this one, and I'm just gonna select it again. So you would see that wherever this intersection has happened, I would get that part as um, in my final output. So that's a Boolean split. Okay. Now next is in solid we do an intersection. So select the first set of surface, which is this, and second set is this. So you can see whatever they are intersecting, that's the part that we would get as a final output. So that's the intersection. Um, Boolean two objects. So if you just want a Boolean two object, that would be a union of two objects. So this and this, let's say, so these two would be a Boolean. Uh, so you could select otherwise, like you can select different kind of geometries. So you can do a left click and you can select different kind of unions that could happen. So yeah, so that's my Boolean union of two objects. Now solid again, Boolean split. So if I have this one, I want to split with this, I could, so I would have this geometry, I would have this geometry, I would have all the geometries, but I would also have this area that I wanted to split in between. So all these would be available to me as an output um, for in the form of solids. So that's a Boolean split. Yeah, so I think that was more or less that we um, have in solid. I think I'm gonna make another video for transformation. I don't see there are a lot of commands here, but I think it would be better if I take a break and make another video on transformation. Cool. Thank you so much.